Strange Brew Podcast, Season 1, Episode 392, the politest rivalry in sports. Brewers and Twins over the weekend at American Family Field. Brewers take the series, dramatic fashion on Sunday. Luis Lara, I'm getting better. 2 incredible catches. One where he kind of lost it, but then he was able to use his speed once he found it. And then the catch in the 10th inning is one of the best catches of the year. Jake, also known as Rake, he comes through again on Sunday. Hit a home run, his 21st opposite field single to win it in the bottom of the 10th inning. Got to tip your cap to DL Hall, too. In addition to that Lara catch, he puts a 0 up in the top half of the 10th inning, and the Brewers are able to squeak out a 4-3 win. They are 30 games over 500. Let me say again. The Brewers are 30 games over 500 at 74-44 coming out of the weekend. Now, the Cubs also stay hot, so the division lead remains 5.5 games. Cubs lost Saturday. They won on Sunday. We'll break down the entire Twins series and some injuries, too. Cooper Pratt's on the IL. Joey Ortiz had an MRI. He's got a sore neck. And the Brewers had to sign out of AAA Syracuse in the Met system Ji-Hwan Bae to be basically in the lineup yesterday. He came in, played second base, got a bunt single, but they were just in need of somebody to fill that utility infielder role with some of the injuries they had heading into Sunday's matchup. We'll talk about that, and there is going to be a brutal West Coast trip that gets underway tonight. 7 games, 3 in San Diego, 4 against the LA Dodgers, who are having a rough week after they picked up Tarek Skubal. We'll break all of that down. Want to talk a little bit Packer family night. I didn't really watch it. My wife and I were at the Brewer game Friday night. I watched clips of it, I guess, when I got back home. Not a lot to go over. Tons of penalties. Matt LaFleur talked about that. And we had Trey Smack hitting 7 of 8. Okay. All right. Missed a 51-yarder, but he hit 7 of 8 on Friday. 2 practices this week. Preseason game number 1. How did they not move this to Lambeau Field? It is Packers and Steelers in Pittsburgh on Thursday. And I want to talk a little Bucks as well at the end of the podcast. Don Nelson passing away at 86 years old. The Bucks all-time winningest coach. 2nd all-time winningest coach in NBA history. Long, full, successful life. But we'll talk a bit about the late 70s and early to mid-80s Bucks under Don Nelson, too. Let's go.
On the ground, a chance here. Durham to Hardy to first. Hit time! Yes! The Brewers win! Yes!
Here comes Melvin to the 25, to the 20, Gordon 15, 10, 5, touchdown! Wisconsin! Record-breaking run!
Morgan a smash up the middle, base hit to center. Here comes Gomez around third. A throw and the Brewers win!
Here's the snap. He looks, he throws, it's complete interception. And there is your Super Bowl dagger.
Booker the drive, gets inside, leans in, knocked away and stolen by Holiday. Phoenix has to foul, a pinnacle ball, throws it down. Swinging fly ball in the right center. Broxton is there, and they're the champions. They have done it. It's been a 50-year journey. Wisconsin, we've got a room at the top of the world tonight. The Milwaukee Bucks are NBA champions.
Yeah, welcome in on your Monday morning. Like, rate, and subscribe if you can. I don't know, not every format has the subscription thing, I don't think, or where it gives you an alert where you get new episodes. But if you could give us a rating, as we talk about the top of every podcast just about, make sure you do that if you are able to do that on the 5-star tier. So please give us a rating however you consume the podcast on Spotify, on Apple, on iHeart. I learned that our B93 signal is on iHeart. I learned that at the end of last week. Good for us. I have no idea how that happened. But that's a lot of my administration here. That's Sheboygan's Country B93. A lot of things happen without my knowledge, and I find it's better to operate that way. And it gives you plausible deniability if things didn't go wrong. So we are getting after it on a Monday. We have a Monday-Friday format this week. As I talked about, I think, an episode or 2 ago, after working 4 grueling weeks, Monday through Friday, I worked 4 full weeks in a row. It is time for some much-needed downtime. My wife and I are headed out of town Friday night. We are road tripping And we are going to 3 national parks. So that is next week, I will just be gone. There will be no podcast next week. And then when we come back, we'll be knocking on the door of the NFL season, the college football season. We're going to talk about the 5 bold predictions. We'll knock off 1 per episode heading into the beginning of the Packers season. But Monday, Friday this week, and then Squadoosh coming up next week, Monday, Friday, as we are going to Mammoth Cave, the Smokies, and then Congaree National Park in South Carolina, then loop it all the way around and back. Might stop in Nashville on the way back, and then all the way back by the following Sunday. So Monday, Friday this week, off next week. I did see this on my Twitter feed here moments before we clicked record. Somebody sent me this. Oh, we can talk a little Badger football, too, if you want. I do have an email on that. And I'm not sure how relevant this will be for a mailbag episode. Also, it's a 1-sentence email, so in the vein of college football, did you see Akron football? They have decided to make, or they're going to do a giveaway. 1 season ticket holder, which, by the way, they sold out their season tickets, I think, just about because of this. They are going to allow 1 lucky season ticket holder to design and play call the opening drive of Akron football against Robert Morris this year. What a genius way to sell a bunch of season tickets. Now, I saw a lot of people responding to this post on Akron's page where they talk about this giveaway. And people found out that in the upper tiers of Akron Stadium, you can buy season tickets for like $75 for a seat. So you had a lot of people spending small amounts of money, but, you total it all up. They're just trying to win that contest where they get a chance to call the opening drive, the pre-scripted plays on the opening drive of Akron versus Robert Morris. Is Akron Maction? I think they are Maction. They've got to be Maction. Hold on, let's Google that. Let's ask ChatGPT. Is Akron in the MAC? More like Macron, right? Am I right? Yes, they are. Okay, so they are. This is Maction. And I don't know when they're going to announce this, but how fun is this? 1 lucky fan able to script the opening drive in the home opener. Extra chance to win with every new season ticket holder you refer. Random drawing among season ticket holders is going to be held on August 19th. And then somebody's going to get to live out if you play NCAA football. If you played Madden football back in the day, I'd just be going. There was a glitch in the early Madden computer games. I'll never forget. One of the first Madden games I played was on PC in 1992 or 3, and it came on a floppy disk. This is like OG Madden. And I remember my friends and I discovered that there was essentially a glitch in the game where anytime you did a fake punt, or maybe you just called a punt on 4th down, and then you took off with your punter, like the computer in that element, in that era of gaming, couldn't wrap its mind around that you were taking off and not punting. I think we found in the 91-92 PC version of Madden football that you could just fake punt your way down the field the entire time. So I'd be calling a lot of fake punts. I'd be calling some Statue of Liberty, some double reverses, some double pits to chesty. I'd be calling all kinds of wacky stuff out there. I think anybody would do that. Whoever this is better do that. Or are you going to have somebody that takes this really seriously and says, this could be my big break? What if they go right down the field in 5 plays and score a touchdown? Is this person going to get a look then from a Division I AA team or a Division II or 3 team? But one of those season ticket holders is going to get to call plays for the opening drive of the Akron Robert Morris game. That's going to make that game. I don't even know. I assume it's going to be on TV somewhere, right? It's got to be streaming somewhere. Probably on Peacock or something. But I want to see that then. I want to see this fan call these plays. Quick slants. I'd do quick slants. I would just quick slant my whole way down the field. Which Madden was that? That was... I remember when I was in college, every year they tried to add some new thing to Madden. Like one year they added the hit stick, which was awesome. One year they added the passing cone, where if you were a good quarterback, your vision took up, like Peyton Manning's passing cone took up the entirety of the field. Somehow Peyton Manning could throw accurately to the left side of the field while he was looking to the right side of the field. But the worse you were as a quarterback, you got that really thin passing cone. They added that at one point. I forget which Madden it was, though. Probably 2003, 03, 04, 05, somewhere in there, where the quick slants, you'd spread them out 4 wide, and you could just quick slant people to death. I remember once my cousin had me down. He lives in Evanston, the Chicago area. And he used to hold, when I was a youngster, he would have a Madden tournament with all his buddies. So my cousin's 7 years older than me. But, we played video games a lot when he would come up to Sheboygan or we'd go down there. So he invited me. I think I was 16 years old maybe, or 17 years old. So he was 23. And he was hosting at his apartment a Madden tournament. And it was pretty sick, I have to say. For 2000, whatever it was, 2001 or 2002, he had multiple TVs set up in multiple rooms. We had gigantic cases of chicken wings and a quarter barrel of beer, a half barrel of beer. And I'm just living the dream. 16, 17 years old, no parental supervision, nothing, just chopping it up and playing Madden and getting chicken wing sauce on controllers, on PS2 controllers, which I'm sure he was pumped about. But I'll never forget one of the first games I played in that tournament. I just quick slanted. I mean, I thought the guy was going to kill me. I mean, these guys are in their early to mid 20s in that era. So a little 16-year-old dweeb from Sheboygan goes down there, and I just quick slant. I'd call a different play, then I'd hot route a quick slant. I just quick slanted my way up and down the field. You couldn't stop it. Even if you went press coverage, a guy would be able to get off the block and get open. Quick slant left, quick slant right. Every once in a while, you do that little tight end, like fade or tight end across the middle, just to mix things up a little bit. But then right back to the quick slants. So that's another thing I would call if I had the chance to do this. I don't even know if they have any more season tickets available. This thing went like wildfire on Twitter that if you sign up and pay whatever, like we said, $75 or $80 to be a season ticket holder for Akron, you may be able to call their first set of offensive plays against Robert Morris. That is going to be wildly entertaining. So they choose that. That is next week. When do they choose the winner? Next week, Wednesday on the 19th. And then I did have an email from our friend Sam in Plymouth. He said, John, are we going over on the Badgers season win total at 6.5? Actually, one of my close college buddies, I got a text or two of my buddies who both worked at the campus radio station in Stevens Point, 90 FM, your only alternative. And we did a sports talk show for the public affairs block called Sports Beat. So it was my buddies Tony and Nick. We kind of rotated that, I think, Tony's last year, and then me and Nick did it maybe the last year that we were there. But we're on a text chain together, and Tony sent a text to us I think in the middle of the week where he saw the 6.5 of the Badgers and said, you have to go under, right? And I said, I don't know, man. I don't know. I think I kind of agree with emailer Sam. I did this last year, and it was a whole big fiasco on the other text thread I've got going where I was basically taken to task because I forget what the over-under was last year. And I was texting my buddies, how high could it have been? I think it was like 5.5. Maybe it was 6 last year. And I said before opening night, or an hour before kickoff on opening night, I sent a text to the thread and said, I put money on the Badgers to beat whoever they played. Who'd they play on opening night? And the quarterback went down, and I couldn't believe it. On the first drive, they played Miami of Ohio on opening night. So I texted them before that game and said, I've got money on the Badgers to cover whatever the spread was. They didn't cover that. And then I took the over on 6 wins or whatever it was. I think it was 6. I think it was sitting at 6. And I had a buddy that said, this is just, you may as well flush your money down the toilet. Donate money to something worthy instead of doing this. Whole big thing. And then, of course, we saw, who was the quarterback last year? They have to have a healthy quarterback this year, don't they? Who was the guy they brought in from Maryland last year? And he literally lasted, Billy Edwards. He lasted 2 series before tweaking his knee, and we basically never saw him again. Maybe a handful of plays the rest of the year. And the Badgers won that game. Then they beat Middle Tennessee. Then they lost a gentleman 6 games in a row before their next one against Washington. And then they would have had to win out, I think, to get the over on 6. Maybe it was 5.5. Maybe all they had to do was win 6 games with that schedule last year. Anyway, so I did that last year, and it flopped big time. I think I did it the year before, too, and it flopped when they finished 5-7. But looking at the schedule this year, as I was texting my buddies Tony and Nick, when Tony said, you've got to go under, right? I said, I don't know, man. Look at the schedule. Notre Dame is ranked 5th in the country, I think, in either the coaches or the AP, whichever one just came out about a week ago. It's the coaches poll. So Notre Dame is 5th in the country. They got 5 first-place votes, too. So that's what the Badgers are staring down opening night, Lambeau Field, Labor Day weekend, Sunday night, under the lights on NBC. They will take on the number 5 team in the country, and they are, like we said, 21-point underdogs. And that's holding. It's still 21 like it was whenever we talked about an episode or 2 ago. You have to assume that's a loss. However, if they win that game, like that game's the tipping point, like we talked about in the mailbag episode too. If you win that game, the only hope this team has to get ranked in the top 25 this year is if they stun Notre Dame and then you win the 2 games against the directional schools, Western Illinois and Eastern Michigan and ITT Tech. You got to win all those. But if you go 3-0 and you've got a victory over the number 5 team in the country, you're probably going to be in the top 25. I also think that Notre Dame game is a linchpin to basically guaranteeing they're going to hit the over on 6.5. The juice on 6.5 on the over is actually minus 125, and the under is even, which means it's weighted where more money is going on the over right now at 6.5. You have to assume for the purposes of actually trying to make money here, they're going to lose to Notre Dame, right? So let's just say they lose to Notre Dame. You absolutely must beat Western Illinois and Eastern Michigan, and I don't think they'll have a problem doing that, even though they have had some issues with that in the Luke Fickell era. So that puts you at 2-1. Then the schedule's kind of weird. I mean, you go to Penn State. Penn State was a preseason top 10 last year. Then they fired James Franklin. They had such a bad year. I don't even know. Who is the head coach? Is it the head coach at Akron? Who is the head coach at Penn State? Matt Campbell? Okay, 10-year run at Iowa State. He ends up at Penn State. So that's a team in flux. But I think, again, for the purposes of this experiment, you have to assume, even if that's a team in transition, you're in Happy Valley, I don't think you're going to win that game. So that puts you at 3-2. Then you're home with Michigan State. I assume that Michigan State is going to be a little bit better this year because Pat Fitzgerald is there. He did something, right? I mean, I forget what it was, but he got canned at Northwestern. It wasn't good. But remember, during his time at Northwestern, all of those Wildcat teams were super frisky. No pun intended, but kind of intended. No matter how much talent they had or didn't have, he seemed to be a squeeze the most toothpaste out of the tube kind of coach. I assume he's still going to do that at Michigan State, but that is a program very much in a rebuild, and they're not spending near the money the Badgers have this year. So I would say that's a win. So that gets you to your 2-1, 2-2, 3-2. Then you're at UCLA, and then home against USC. So you've got the two West Coast teams, one on the road. UCLA's kind of blah. USC, they are not, I don't think they're ranked right now, but that's a team, if they start 4-1, they're a heritage program where if they start the season quickly, they'll probably be in the top 25. Are they in the top 25 for the Coaches Bowl? Oh, yeah, they're 14th. Okay, so that's probably going to be a loss. I think they split that, though. I think they'll split the UCLA-USC two-step, whether they win at UCLA and lose at home to USC or do the reverse. I think they will be able to split that. So then you're at 1-2, you're 2-2, you're 3-2, you're 4 and wait, what? 1, 2, 3. You're 4-3 through 7 games. At Iowa, I would hope they would be able to be more competitive. But remember the rallying cry last year for Luke Fickell was they were going back to 2 years ago and the drubbing they took against Iowa, and we're going to get revenge. And our whole offseason revolved around trying to find a way to beat Iowa, and they lost 44-0. You have to assume that's going to be a loss. So I've got them at 4-4 through 8 games. Rutgers at home is probably going to be a win. So that puts you at 5-4. So you need 2 more. You've got to win 2 out of the final 3. At Maryland, who you never quite know. At Purdue, that's got to be a win. Or if we're assuming Colton Joseph is healthy, that's got to be a win. And then Minnesota, you're at home. It's Black Friday. I remember on a podcast at the end of 2 years ago, not last year, but 2 years ago when they played that Black Friday at Camp Randall and the stadium was half full and it was freezing cold and it was one of the most pathetic efforts I think I've ever seen from Badger football in my entire life. And they weren't able to bounce back. So they've lost the axe 2 years or 3 years running now. But I don't mind that setup. If you're going into Maryland, Purdue, Minnesota, and you have to win 2 out of the 3 to get to 7-5, I think that's doable. So when you look through this whole thing, maybe you get lucky in one of these games. Maybe you get lucky at Penn State. Maybe you get lucky at Iowa. There's not a lot here other than Notre Dame to begin the year. And I guess USC, a top 15 team right now. What will they be on October 24th? I don't know. But I think you're probably going to get to those last 2 weeks at Purdue and at home against Minnesota, where if you split those, I think you're probably going to get to 7-5. I think you got to go over at the minus 120 or minus 125 juice. But I thought about that. And then I got that text from Tony, and he was so emphatic in saying you have to go under, right? And I said, I don't know. I kind of thought maybe we'd go over. I am not going to text my other group thread about going over. So I think I'm going over on 6.5. As we talked about in the mailbag episode, I am not Luke Fickell's number one fan, but I'm a Badger fan. So I hope, like a lot of Badger fans, even those that were booing at a bar or booing Luke Fickell in person last year and chanting "Fire Fickell" at the end of whatever game that was, I think even if you have a sour taste, as our emailer said on the mailbag episode, even if you have a sour taste in your mouth, you got to de-sour and sweeten. De-souring's not enough. You got to sweeten too. I don't know if I can sweeten, but I can maybe de-sour. I am a Badger fan, and even though I'm not a huge Luke Fickell fan with what has happened the past 3 years and in some of the ways he's conducted himself off the field in some of those interviews and expressing his frustration passive-aggressively, I want them to win. I mean, I'm a Badger fan. I want them to succeed. Saturdays are a lot of fun in fall if you have a Badger team that is competitive, that is winning Big Ten games, that you can look forward to. Now, the alternative side of that coin is the last couple of years, Saturdays have been wide open. You can sign me up for anything. Saturday weddings, fine. October Saturday weddings, fine. Raking the yard, blowing the leaves, doing the last grass cutting and mulching, fine, because you didn't really want to watch the Badgers. So I'd like them to get back to that place this year where we can actually enjoy or look forward to, like when I get to work on Monday and it's October and the Brewers are just coming off of a World Series championship. It's late October, early November, and the Brewers just won a World Series. I want to be able to look at the football schedule that weekend and get excited for not just the Packer game, but the Badger game too. And when I look at that schedule, there's a lot of unknown dynamics there, especially with Penn State on the road. What is that program going to look like? And maybe UCLA a little bit in there too, and maybe Minnesota toward the end of the year. But I think you can get 7 wins. If he doesn't get 7 wins, what is going to be enough? Or are they just going to give Luke Fickell, with the new AD, are they just going to give him 2 years? I think this is a make-or-break year for Fickell. Like, if he goes 5-7, if they don't make a bowl game, if they don't finish 500, he's got to be gone, right? Like we talked about, the 2027 class is great. It's a top 20, top 25 class right now, and that is probably going to change. But right now, it is one of the top classes, recruiting classes in the country. But if he doesn't win this year, it doesn't mean anything, because most of those guys, if he gets fired, a lot of those guys are going to hit the transfer portal and end up somewhere else. What is the bare minimum? If he goes 6-6 and makes a bowl game, I think he probably keeps his job, right? Even though that's not all that satisfying. If he finishes 7-5 and hits the over, or finds a way to finish 8-4, look, this team is not going to be in the running, I don't think, for a college football playoff spot or a 9 or 10 win year. But if he finishes 7-5 or 8-4, I feel like that's a pretty strong year, even though the schedule's a lot softer than it was last year. But what do you think the bare minimum? I'll ask you a question. Instead of asking me the mailbag episodes, I'll ask you a question. What do you think the bare minimum is? Email us, strangebrewpod@AOL.com. What do you think the bare minimum is that Luke Fickell can accomplish this year to be given a 5th year? Or is this just a year where even if they win 3 or 4 games again, which I don't see happening, but if that were a world we were to live in, because there's the new AD, does he just get a grace period here again where they're pouring more money into the program? They're basically going to erase the last 3 years because they were ill-prepared. The money wasn't there. McIntosh had no direction to the program. They were rudderless. And do they just wipe that away and give him a free pass and say, all right, now we're starting. This is like a new coach. We're starting all over again with year 1 right now. We're going to try to do this thing right. Forget the dairy raid. Forget Phil Longo. Forget 4 wide. We're going to get back to basics. We're going to pour more money in the program. So if they finish 4-8 again, is that fine? I mean, he's just going to be able to get into his 5th year just because? I don't know. I think 6-6 in a bowl game, a stupid like early to mid-December bowl game, I would think for me, that's the bare minimum for Fickell to see a year 5. If they're sub 500 and they don't make a bowl, how can he get a year 5? But I think it's going to be right there. I mean, it may come down to Minnesota for the Axe on Black Friday, and they may be at 6 wins there, and they have to win that one to hit the over. But I'm comfortable with that, especially if the quarterback is healthy. The quarterback has to be healthy this year. Just the odds, right? Just the odds of having your transfer quarterback be hurt every single year. Colton Joseph, I think, he has to play 10 or 11 games, hopefully the full boat, but has to play the majority of the games. If he's healthy and this offense gets back to basics and the offensive line comes together the way we think it will, I think they're going to be right there. They'll either have that 7th win by the time they get to Minnesota, or that will probably be the one that determines it. But I don't mind that. I don't mind being at home on a Black Friday if the team is playing better and the crowd's there and loud. It's a primetime game, 6:30 kickoff on NBC on Black Friday, under the lights. So yeah, I think they're either going to have it or that's going to be the game. But we're going over. We're going over on 6.5. All right, I didn't expect to do 24 minutes on the Badgers there, but we did. Thank you, Sam, for that email. I don't think that one, we're probably not going to do a mailbag. Yeah, maybe we'll do one before the kickoff of the NFL season. But that Badger game is less than a month away. I don't think we'll be doing a mailbag before that, and there's no point in talking over-unders on season win totals if you already got one game down with that Notre Dame game. If they win the Notre Dame game, we're cruising. If they win the Notre Dame game and start 3-0, not only will they be in the top 25 for however long that ends up being, but at that point, I feel really good that the over on 6.5 would catch. That Notre Dame game is kind of a tipping point if they can find a way there. All right, let's talk about the Brewer weekend, and then we'll just touch a little bit on the Packers. I mean, there's not a lot to go over with that family night. There was a lot of false starts. There were a lot of penalties. Matt LaFleur talked about that. We'll break that down a little bit. And then I do want to talk about Don Nelson and his passing at the end of the podcast. But the Brewers had the Twins in town, the politest rivalry in sports. And we were there on Friday, and it was super polite. Just a bunch of Twins and Brewers fans hamming it up, opening it up, and drinking beers and having a good time. No one was talking trash, no acrimony, no near fist fights in the upper tank, which is where we were, and you almost always see that in a Cubs-Brewers game or a White Sox-Brewers game where people are a little overserved, and then by the 5th or 6th inning in a tight game, which Friday was, and the road team's winning, sometimes those tensions can boil over, and we get a high ground versus low ground battle in the upper tank in the Terrace Reserved. But we didn't have that because everybody seems to get along. Even the Twins fans, as we made our way out on Friday night, they won the game. Oh, boy, good game, guys. It was just one of those. It was like, really nice game. We had a great time. Fantastic time. Where should we go? Where should we go for the rest of the night? Give them suggestions. Just people getting along. It was a bummer game, though, on Friday. Shane Drowan got the start. You jump out to a 4-0 lead. Now, we were a little late arriving. Churio went yard. Boy, he is red hot again. What a weird up and down. Now, I know baseball, it's all about how long the season is. It's the grind, and you have cold streaks and hot streaks. But he was fighting for Player of the Month in the month of June, hit 10 home runs in the month of June, hit 1 home run, and hit 210 in the month of July. And now in the month of August, it's only August 10th as we're recording this, he already has 5 home runs in the month of August. So I don't know what all changed there, but he is very hot and cold the last 3 months. But he had the leadoff home run, and then in the second inning, they get 3 more runs on the board. I mean, you've got a 4-0 lead, and you're feeling like, with our pitching and how good it's been and how good the back end of the bullpen has been, this is a win. But Shane Drowan just did not have it. Frustrating game to be at where he was walking guys, giving up a lot of hard contact. That Twins offense, it kind of reminds me of the Pirates offense that was in town earlier in the week. Not a lot of household names on that team. I mean, you go up and down that Twins lineup and you see Royce Lewis, Josh Bell, I think people know, Cody Clemens, Roger Clemens' kid, Little Rocket. He's turned into a really good player, 20-plus home runs this year. But A. Martin, Ryan Jeffers, Keyshaw, Victor Caratini, former Brewer, they're not names that you're going to know that are household names for us as a fan base, even as a big baseball fan in general. Not a lot of people I knew. They had hard contact all weekend. I mean, they were really squaring baseballs up. And Shane Drowan just had one of those starts where he just didn't have it. He gave up 6 runs, 9 hits. He walked 4 guys. So that was a bummer to have a 4-0 lead in the first 2 innings, feel like you were going to be able to cruise to a win. Twins got in front 6-4. Then the Brewers tied it. And again, you're kind of thinking after the 5th inning, after they tied, all right, they'll find a way to win this game. They'll get a couple of runs and find a way to win this game. And then Antonio Senzatella came in. He was good his first 2 appearances in Milwaukee. Not good on Friday. Gave up a couple of runs. And the Twins just kind of dinked and dunked and hit their way through. 8-6 win. Brewers had a couple of chances late but couldn't scratch one across or 2 across. And they fall 8-6 on Friday. Then they come back on Saturday. Let's get Saturday's box score up here, and fell down early, right? They got the 1-0 lead on the hit by pitch, and then the Twins again able to put 3 on the board in the second inning. That was off of, was it Gasser on Saturday? He was kind of grinding too. Yeah, 4 2/3. Not awful. 3 runs, 7 hits, 3 strikeouts. But then the Twins get a 3-1 lead. And at that point, with the way they'd been hitting on Friday and Saturday, you're kind of thinking, oh, boy, you're going to lose this series at home. And I don't know, the Twins are fighting. They're at that 500 level. The AL Central is not a division that has a ton of heavy hitters. The White Sox still lead at 5 games over 500. The Twins are 4 games back. And the Twins are 1.5 games out of a wild card currently held by the Rangers at 500, the bottom half of that American League. There's a lot of teams in it because nobody can seem to separate. But that's not a bad Twins team. But when you're the best team in baseball, a team that's a little bit under 500, you expect to win that series. So down 3-1. But the Brewers rally. Bryce Terang, what did I tell you on Friday? What did I say? He's a guy that should get MVP votes. He's not the MVP. But he should get, with his defense and with how he's hit this year and the runs driven in and the WAR, he should get top 10 votes, I would think, for NL MVP if he just keeps doing what he's doing. Game-tying 2 RBI single, huge hit to get up off the deck. And then Andrew Vaughn in the 8th inning, go-ahead RBI single, back end of the bullpen, got the job done on Saturday. I can't tell you how good Uribe. Now, we'll talk about yesterday's game. He had to work around some trouble there. But he hasn't given up a run in 2 months. Ashby's looked refreshed after finally getting some downtime. He was good on Saturday, and McGill gets the save, a 4-pitch save. Do you remember? I am old enough to remember where a lot of Brewer fans in the middle of April wanted to leave Trevor McGill on the front stoop like an old couch and just hope somebody comes and picks him up. That's what they wanted to do. DFA. Those were the tweets that were going out when he had 2 bad outings in April. DFA him. He doesn't have it anymore. Cut him. He doesn't have it anymore. He comes out of Saturday with the save, and then yesterday he had a scoreless inning. His ERA is now in the 2.5s, and he's only given up a handful of runs in the past 2 months. 21 saves, 21 of 23 on saves. People wanted him cut for 2 bad outings and 1 blown save in the middle of April. But they are able to seal it for a 4-3 win on Saturday. So they go for the series win yesterday, Miz Day. By the way, the guy on the mound for the Twins, speaking of open Midwest, Connor Prelip, rookie for the Twins, is from Toma. He is a Wisco boy. And he was pretty good. 5 innings of 3-run ball, 7 strikeouts. At one point, I think he struck out 4 or 5 Brewer batters in a row. Now, Mizorowski, by his standards, and I was talking about this on a couple of morning shows today, the standards that we have put on Jacob Mizorowski, the expectations we have. This goes back to whatever episode we talked about, expectation management. Like, I preach that to any high schools that come through, any Cub Scouts that come through, any young people that come through the building here to take a tour and look at the studio and see what happens, like a cautionary tale. It's like Scared Straight with less swearing. It's kind of what it is. I don't want to do that. I don't want to end up like that guy. But I always preach expectation management. Whatever you set the bar at when you start, that is the expectation. So just make sure that if you set the bar high, that you're able to follow through on that, because any dip in that is going to be looked at as a drop-off. And I think that's kind of what Mizorowski is dealing with, at least after yesterday. 6 innings, gave up 3 runs. He gave up a couple of home runs. 6 innings of 3-run ball, 9 strikeouts, 1 walk. Those are pretty damn good numbers, but hey, I fall victim to it too. When he gave up the second home run, the 2-run shot that tied the game, you thought, what the hell? What's this guy's problem? What happened to him? Is he hurt? But Mizorowski made a couple of mistakes, and they were at 99 miles an hour and not 100 or 101 or 102. But the problem wasn't even so much the velocity on the 2 home runs. The problem was the location. It was middle down. Anybody that's played, speaking of calling Madden plays and calling the Akron preset game plays for their opening game, if you win that, when you go back to MVP baseball on PS2, one thing you learn from that is that if you leave something middle down, that's basically a hot zone for every hitter. And it doesn't matter if you're throwing 99, 100, 101. Middle down will get crushed a lot of the time. The power pitch for Mizorowski, it's obviously the fastball, but when he elevates it, it's almost unhittable. When he's at the top tier or right at the top of the zone, or sometimes like a foot above the zone, it's coming in so fast, and batters have to make a decision and commit to a swing so early. That's why sometimes you see some guys, you saw it yesterday, they're swinging like wildly at a pitch that's 3 feet above the zone, because you have to basically start swinging the bat. You have to make a decision before the ball even leaves his hand. That's how quick it's coming in. Well, he makes people look really bad on that 100-plus mile-per-hour fastball up in the zone. But on the 2 home runs, they were both down in the zone. Now, look, they only got him for 3 hits. 1 was an infield hit, and the other 2 were the home runs. But again, he got out to the early lead with Jackson Chourio hitting a solo shot, and the Twins tied it on the solo shot at 1. But then you got the lead back. Jake Bauers home run, Hamilton RBI double with Miz on the mound. And now you have a 3-1 cushion, even though the offense wasn't overwhelming yesterday. You kind of thought, all right, this one is a win. A 3-1 with the Miz on the mound and how good the back end of the bullpen is. And then he gives up that 2-run bomb to Cody Clemens, and we're tied at 3. Now, it stays that way all the way until the 10th inning. And after using Uribe and Ashby and McGill, and Ashby and Uribe yesterday had to work around a mess of trouble. I think they both loaded the bases with 2 outs, but they were able to get out of it. And Uribe, who didn't have his best stuff, 33-pitch inning. I don't think I've ever seen that from Uribe. But he keeps that scoreless run intact. Again, he has not given up a run in almost 2 months. And I was already, if he would have given up a hit there, bases loaded in the 8th inning with 2 down, if he would have given up a hit there and you fall down 4-3 or 5-3, obviously would have been a bummer. But I was already accepting in my brain, like, okay, the guy hasn't given up a home run since June 18th. Like, at some point he's going to give up a run, but he didn't. And you get to the 10th inning. I actually think in this new era of the ghost runner to begin the extra innings, I actually think the home team has it worse off, because if the away team is able to score that ghost runner or put a couple of runs on the board, it almost always feels to me like if you're the home team down 5-3, down 6-3, or even down 4-3, it kind of feels like you're up against it. I think the away teams actually have the advantage in the ghost runner era. But DL Hall, with the help of Luis Lara, is able to put a 0 up. And tip of the cap to DL Hall, not just the Lara catch. Well, we were talking about when they picked up JoJo Romero in that trade about how they need a lefty out of the bullpen because Koenig's been hurt all year, Zerpa's out for the year. You've got Ashby, but he's been used a lot. And what did I say about DL Hall? The overall numbers are good, but I don't trust him because he walks too many guys. I don't trust him in September, in October, in a one-run game in the NLDS. Well, he went out there in the 10th inning and he got the job done. Now, Lara is the guy that made it happen in the 10th inning with one down and that ghost runner on. He makes a catch. This is a Lorenzo Cain catch.
And he swings and drives one to right. That's well hit. Lara's on the run. He leaps. Oh, my goodness!
How?
Luis Lara makes the play.
I have a question. How? I'll take my answer off the air. I'll hang up and listen. When they gave the side kind of behind home plate angle, when you see the direction that ball is heading to the right field corner, and when you see where Lara is set up in right field, I know he's fast. I mean, we saw that in his debut when he was running the bases. I have no idea how he was able to get to that spot, and he crashes headlong into the wall. Now, earlier in the game, he had one that he just lost track of in right field, and he's still learning. He's 21 years old. He played center field in AAA, so he's getting used to right field. He's getting used to right field in major league stadiums that have an extra tier of seats, and he's getting used to all of that. He lost one earlier in the game, but then found it and again used his speed to catch up to it and track it down. This one he had a beat on the whole way, but I just didn't think he was going to be able to get there, even with his elite speed, even with his turbo button.
And drives one to right. That's well hit. Lara's on the run. He leaps. Oh, my goodness! Luis Lara makes the play.
No clue how he was able to do that. And he runs literally into the chain part of the wall that's in that stupid area that I want to get rid of. I want to get rid of that little jut out in right field. How many heartbreaking home runs have opposing teams hit in that little jut out area? But he ran into that knee first, full speed. And he goes down and he's hurting. He's kind of writhing on the ground. And I'm thinking, oh boy, but then to be 21, he gets up, he immediately sits up like the Undertaker. He pops back up, and literally 90 seconds after he ran full speed into a wall, knee first, I'm fine. It's just, if that were me, I am dead maybe. I don't know. I'm in a full body cast at the minimum for the next month or two. But to be 21 years old and to be able to bounce back like that, he probably took one Advil last night and thought, all right, I'm good. I'll just sleep this off. No problem whatsoever. Maybe a little raspberry, I'm good. But that is what allows DL Hall then to get out of that inning. He strikes out the next guy, and to put a 0 up in the ghost runner era in the top of the 10th inning. We get to the bottom of the 10th inning, and it ends up with 2 on and Jake Bauers at the plate. Now, I had a text exchange with a buddy, and he's right. So in the top half of that inning, or maybe it was the 9th inning, the Brewers burned their DH to try to win the game. So DL Hall was actually scheduled to hit 5th in that inning. I think they had somebody they could have gone to there, maybe. But you do kind of wonder, with 1 out and runners on first and second, and Jake Bauers at the plate, who's had a tremendous year, who hit a home run earlier in the game, Rake Bauers. Rake used to be a tongue-in-cheek nickname, like I know we've talked about. Honest to God, hand to God, I think we were one of the first people to start calling Jake Rake Bauers, but it was sort of sarcastic, but I still get credit for it, right? Even if it was kind of mean-spirited, do I still get credit for it? Because I think I gave him that nickname when he was hitting 190 in 2024, and then 2 years later, he's having a career year. But if you're the Twins, something you could have done is walked Jake Bauers to load the bases. Then Lara would have been up, but Lara maybe didn't even know where he was after hitting the wall that hard the previous inning. And if you're able to strike him out, then I think DL Hall was going to hit. So you almost wonder, you never want to put the game-winning run on third base with less than 2 outs, which is what they would have done had they walked Bowers. But you almost wonder if you'd rather go after the over-exuberant 21-year-old who just made a sensational defensive play and maybe is a little banged up. And then if you get through him, then DL Hall, I don't know who they had on the bench to pinch hit. Maybe they had somebody. But then maybe you're in a situation where the Brewers would have had to hit DL Hall, and we haven't seen a pitcher hit in like 5 years. But they pitch to Bowers, and he makes him pay. Opposite field single. Bryce Terang scooting his way in.
Two. Bowers. Base hit. Here comes Terang. Here comes the throw. Terang. It's safe. He's safe. And the Brewers win.
Now, you knew they were going to review that, because why wouldn't you review that? It's the game-winning play. Lara, to his credit, now he's doing his job, but as a 21-year-old, in a moment like that, maybe you get kind of lost in the moment. He is saying to Bryce Terang, he is showing him in the on-deck circle exactly where to slide, because Lara can see where the ball is coming in, and it was a pinpoint throw. I mean, that was an excellent throw from left field. And he's showing him, hey, I think you're going to slide to the outside, back part of the plate. And he did. And he slid in there. And I don't even think they got a tag on him. They review it. It was a quick review. And the Brewers end up winning it 4-3 on Sunday. Now, let me see if I can find the Murph audio here. Pat Murphy pretty emphatically, here we go, said in the postgame that that's one of their best wins in a long time. And look, they've won a ton of games. I mean, it's got to be hard for Pat Murphy at some point to keep playing the underdog role, keep playing the underdog card when your team is 30 games over 500. But I do think he's accurate here. This was a very underdog, chippy, Brewersy win. A lot of people chipped in. A lot of people did a lot of small stuff, and they were able to grind one out. Wasn't a pretty game necessarily.
I mean, this was, in my mind, the best team win in a long, long time. It wasn't the best played. It wasn't perfect. I looked down. Everyone here contributed, from Yelich going into pinch run, you know what I mean? And being willing to do that because it was the best for the team. And Contreras willing to catch the last inning after he's caught, 9 out of 11 games. And those guys aren't going great, but their willingness to do whatever the team asks, unbelievable.
Yeah, he sounded pretty hyped up at the end of that game. So you get the 4-3 win. What else all happened in the box score yesterday? William Contreras, ice cold. That's another guy where in the month of May he hit 300 or 301 or 302. In the month of June he hit 300, 301, 302, something like that. He has been ice cold. He hit 170 in the month of July, and so far I think he's hitting like 110 in the month of August. Now it's only August 10th, but he was an all-star this year, and a lot of that was on the strength of those numbers in May and June. But he's got to get going. You need him to get going. I don't know. You look to next year with William Contreras. He's a 3-time All-Star, 2-time All-Star with the Brewers. I think he catches a really good game. I think he's a good pitch framer. He's good at throwing guys out. But you have seen now, if you click on his player card and you go back over the years, in year 1 in Milwaukee, 17 bombs, 78 driven in, hit 289. Year 2, 23 bombs, 92 driven in, hit 281. And those were fabulous years. So 825 OPS in year 1 in Milwaukee, 831 OPS in year 2. But last year, 754 from 831 to 754. This year, 717. And catchers, as much as we love them, there is a real NFL running back component to catchers where when they get close to 30, and William Contreras is going to be 29 years old this winter, and he's only got 1 year left on his deal, and they've got a catcher at AAA they love, and Jefferson Caro has kind of been knocking on the door. I wonder what ultimately happens with William Contreras. Now, that's a question, and that's a conversation for the offseason. There's nothing that's going to happen with him this year. But when you see those numbers go down, and it looks like some fatigue setting in again this year, and the power just keeps on dipping, I wonder what they're going to do with him. But again, that is a conversation for, with the lockout coming up, that might be a conversation for fall of 2027. But I do wonder about that as you see those numbers kind of dip. And he's been ice cold now for a couple of months. Yelly didn't play, didn't get the start on Sunday, but as he said, he came in and pinch ran when he had to late in that game. Bowers had a couple of hits, Terang a hit, Chourio a hit. Now, the other part of Sunday, you have some injuries. Cooper Pratt tweaked his hamstring, not when he got hit in the groin. Thanks a lot. But he tweaked his hamstring, so he went on the 10-day IL. Joey Ortiz, who then would be the natural guy to go back to at shortstop, he's got neck soreness. He had an MRI over the weekend. Now, he's not on the IL. I assume he's back tonight then. But they had to sign, basically on the taxi squad, They had to sign Ji-Hwan Bae. Bae, there's a picture of me and Bae. Bae, waka waka. He played, that was terrible. He played 4 years. He played 4 seasons in Pittsburgh at the Pirates level, very part-time. 10 games in 22, 111 games in 23, 29 and 24, 13 games last year, and then he's been in the Mets AAA system all year this year. But they just needed someone to play a game. They needed Bae to play. Yeah, it just gets worse. So it's only getting worse. It's like William Contreras' OPS. But they needed him yesterday. He came in and he got a bunt single. 1 at bat, bunt single, 1 for 1. He was playing second base. A little slow double play that broke down after Terang had to move to short late in the game and Bae went to second base. I don't know how long he's going to be on the team, but that's another part of what Pat Murphy's talking about there, where you had a couple of injuries crop up. Your 21-year-old shortstop ends up on the IL. The guy who he replaced, who you would put back there, he's banged up. So you have to make a move, and you sign before the game on Sunday. I assume they had to sign him Saturday night to get him into town to play that quickly. But you have to sign Ji-Hwan Bae, and he goes in there and gives you a bunt single and plays okay deep into second base. We'll see how long he hangs on here, or how long it would take for Joey Ortiz to get back. They seem to think the Cooper Pratt injury is going to be the minimum. It's going to be around that 10-day, maybe 2 weeks at the most. And if Ortiz has to play it short in that interim, that's fine. But if he's not ready to go for a couple of days, then you might have to make more moves, or you just stick with Bae and see what happens there, and you play Terang at short. I don't love that necessarily. He is an excellent defender. We know he's a platinum glove, gold glove caliber second baseman. He came up as a shortstop. They tried that the first year in spring training when Adames left. They tried to move Terang over there. I think he had some arm soreness because that is a much longer throw, and it's something he did coming up, but he hasn't done that in many years. And I think he developed some kind of tendonitis in his shoulder throwing from short to first. It's a much longer throw than second to first. So I don't love that. If you need Terang to play short for a week or two, you don't want that to impact his bat. You don't want him to bang up his arm. So I wonder what they'll do if Joey O can't go tonight. But those moves made before the game as well. So who got the win yesterday? DL Hall got the win. He is 1-0. Brewers are 74-44. Good God. In the words of Jim Ross, good God almighty. They are 3 games up, or are they 2.5 up? What are the overall standings? The Brewers are 2.5 games up on the Tampa Bay Rays. Unbelievable. Those are the top 2 teams in baseball right now. Now, I don't think the Brewers or Rays, even with those records and the gaudy win-loss records, are scaring teams like the Dodgers or Phillies come playoff time, but it is interesting that as we head into a year where there's likely to be a lockout, and a big part of that is going to be that the major market teams can sign anybody and the small market teams can't, it is interesting that you've got the Brewers and Rays are the first and second best teams in baseball right now. Braves are 3 games back of the Brewers for the 2 seed in the 1 seed in the NL. And the Brewers maintain a 5.5 game lead on the Cubs. Cubs got that down to 4.5 when the Brewers lost on Friday, but then the Cubs lost Saturday. Brewers won back to 5.5. Both won on Sunday. So you're 5.5 better and 6 better in the loss column. That division is not done yet by a long shot. They have 7 games left against each other. We got a long way to go. But the Brewers are sitting at 30 games over 500 coming out of yesterday. Now you hit the West Coast. This is a brutal trip. We talked about this on the Friday podcast. You go to San Diego tonight. And then L.A. to take on the Dodgers Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So tonight, it is Logan Henderson on the hill, and he takes on one of the big acquisitions for the Padres at the deadline, Casey Mize, who was another big starting pitcher for the Tigers, as that they unloaded after they unloaded Skubal. So Henderson tonight, 8:40. 8:40 on Tuesday with Kyle Harrison on the hill taking on Walker Buehler. And then Dustin May goes on Wednesday, 3:10, thank God. But he takes on Robbie Ray, another former Cy Young Award winner who the Padres picked up at the deadline. Then you go to L.A. on Thursday, 9:10 on Thursday, 9:10 on Friday, 6:15 Saturday, 3:10 on Sunday. But the Thursday matchup is Drowan taking on Roki Sasaki. Yeah, you're going to see Yamamoto on Friday. You're going to see the All-Star Robleski on Saturday. And, of course, you are going to see Tarik Skubal on Sunday right now, if that holds. And it's interesting that it looks like right now, if this pitching matchup holds on Sunday, Logan Henderson, who it was rumored was the guy the Brewers did not want to part with in a trade for Skubal, it could be Henderson and Skubal locking up on Sunday afternoon at Dodger Stadium. This is a tough trip. I mean, 4-3 would be great. I would probably take 3-4 out of this, given the level of competition. Where are the Padres right now? Are they battling for a while? They must be, because they were buyers. They're not going to win that division. Oh, yeah. Okay, so the wild card, the Cubs are far and away the number one wild card. Diamondbacks are the number 2 wild card, tied with the Phillies. The Padres are 1 game back of the Phillies and Diamondbacks for the 2nd and 3rd wild card spot. So they're right there at 5 games over 500. And again, they didn't get Skubal, but they went pretty far in getting Casey Mize and Robbie Ray, and the Brewers will see both of them in these pitching matchups over the next 3 days. They spent a lot of prospects to get some big-name players to make a push for the playoffs here. So it's a big matchup tonight, 8:40 first pitch. I think that's all of the Brewer stuff. Did we get it all? The catch, Murphy. Yeah, I think we're good. All right, let's just real quick. There's almost nothing to go over with the Packers. Family night was on Friday. A lot of penalties. I can get you the LaFleur audio here. A lot of penalties, and Matt LaFleur basically said, look, it wasn't the best, but it's only a bad practice if you don't learn something from it.
Like the pre-snap penalties. I mean, we had a couple offsides. We had 7 false starts. So that needs to get cleaned up. But I am happy and pleased that our guys had to go through, and you got to fight through fatigue. So it's only a bad practice if you don't learn from it. And our guys got to learn from it, and we got to clean that up before our first preseason.
He was practicing that in the mirror before.
You got to fight through fatigue. So it's only a bad practice if you don't learn from it. And our guys got to learn from it, and we got to clean that up before our first preseason.
You know, I know we just kind of talked about the same thing with Luke Fickell. And they just gave everybody a contract extension. And we're not going to find out how long the extensions were for Goody, for LaFleur, for Russ Ball, for all those guys. I am going to assume that this is a minimum 3-year extension for all of those guys, likely a 4-year extension. But we've talked about, when we went on that little mini rant after he talked about having a darn competitive football team, not talking about how last year was unacceptable even with the injuries, not talking about how not winning a division title in 5 years is unacceptable, having a home playoff game in 5 years is unacceptable. Darn competitive football team. But we talked a little bit about it then. You've had 3 years now where you've been the 7 seed, the last team in. You won the 1 playoff game in 23. Nobody saw that coming. You almost won 2 that year. Then you're out in the first year in Philly 2 years ago, and in dramatic and embarrassing fashion out at Soldier Field in the wild card round last year. If the Packers, and I don't think this is going to happen, but if the Packers were to finish 9-8 again, or 8-9 and barely squeak in, or just miss the playoffs, do we think LaFleur is on any kind of hot seat here? I know in the NFL it's a little different than college football, where you kind of always have, especially with a franchise like the Packers that is rooted in winning in the last 30 years. I think you're kind of always on the hot seat, but this is year 7, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. This is year 8. This is the 8th year that he's been the head coach. And you've been to a couple NFC championship games, and you never really won anything other than that with Rodgers, or got there with Rodgers. And now in the Love era, 3 straight years where you've had a winning record, and you're barely getting in the playoffs, and you won 1 playoff game. Is there any scenario where Matt LaFleur might be done after this year if they underachieve again, if they finish a game above or below 500, barely make the playoffs, out in the first round? Like if they go 9-8 again this year, or whatever it would be, what would it be? 9-8. If they go 9-8 this year and they're the 7 seed and they're out in the wild card round somewhere, are we going to do a year 9 with Matt LaFleur? I wonder. Sometimes I wonder. So anyway, he's kind of grating on me a little bit. Have you noticed? Has the tone of the podcast changed? Again, I want to say again what I said when we talked about the darn competitive football team. I think it was the right move to give him an extension. I just wonder, we're heading into year 8, and this is a franchise that looks at itself every year as a division title contending team, a team that should get home playoff games, and a team that should at some point here make a run for a Super Bowl, you would hope. But is there a world, what is the threshold where Matt LaFleur's job, after just signing an extension, is there a world where he would be in trouble, like legitimate trouble to get fired at the end of the year? And maybe injuries, it's one thing if Jordan Love goes down, knock on wood, Jordan Love goes down, and Jaden Reed doesn't play, and Micah's not back till week 9, and they're 3 games under 500. I mean, that could all play into it, and then you kind of have to feel out how we get there is a big part of what you would do with LaFleur at the end of the year. But if all things are equal and you're just kind of hovering around 500 again, and you're the 7 seed and you're knocked out in the first round, like, are we going to do a year 9? I don't know. But that was family night on Friday. Hey, Trace Mack hit 7 of 8. That wasn't too bad. His only miss was from 51. I know we discussed on the Friday podcast, why are we doing this with a team that we think can go somewhere? Why are we going to ride this roller coaster of the rookie kicker when you feel like everything else on the team, once you get Kraft back, once you get Micah back, you feel like this is a team that should win 11, 12 games, win a division, have a home playoff game or two, make a run to an NFC title game and maybe a Super Bowl. Like I said on the Friday podcast, if you're rebuilding and you don't know what this team is going to be like in 23 when they got rid of Crosby and they drafted Anders Carlson, I'm fine with that because you don't know what that team's going to be. So let's see if we can all grow together. But on this team, I don't know. But he was good. He was pretty good on Friday, 7 of 8, and he only missed the 51-yarder. We'll see how he looks on Thursday. Preseason game number 1 is on the way. Public practice this morning and tomorrow, both at 10:30. And then travel day on Wednesday, and preseason game number 1 is coming up on Thursday. Again, I will never understand how this game was not moved to Green Bay. It's just the preseason. Now, I know there's logistics there. And then if you give the Packers, then do they have to go on the road to San Diego or whatever it is in week 3 of the preseason? Then that changes things for the Chargers. So it's a domino effect if you were to do that, if you were actually to make that move and move this game to Lambeau so Rodgers gets one more kind of game at Lambeau Field. It's not just as simple as that, but is it? Isn't it? Kind of feels like it could be in the preseason. I feel like you could make that right by the Steelers. You could make that right by their gate, whatever they would make on that home game. You could try to find a way to split the gate or to make them whole again. It just makes so much sense to do it that way, but I know it's not as easy as just move one game. Then it's a ripple effect, and then the other teams have to figure things out too. But that is Thursday night at 6 o'clock on NFL Network. So I think locally in the Green Bay, Milwaukee market, probably Channel 4. But that is 6 o'clock on Thursday. We'll see if Rodgers plays. Rodgers has hinted that this being his last year and McCarthy being back and it's the last ride, maybe he would play a little bit in the preseason just to get himself reacclimated with that offense. I don't know if that will happen on Thursday or not, but it has been talked about. But that'll be 6 o'clock on Thursday night. Now, real quick, I just want to spend a little bit of time. This was before my era of being a Bucs fan, but a legend in the NBA coaching game passed away on Sunday at 86 years old. The second winningest coach in NBA history and the winningest coach in Bucs franchise history, Don Nelson, passed away at 86 years old. Long, full life, successful life, basketball Hall of Famer in 2012, which is the clip I'm going to play here in a second. That's what this is from, his acceptance speech to the Hall of Fame in 2012. Now, Don Nelson, again, he coached for the Bucs from 76, midway through that year, or early on in that year, all the way through 1987. Now, I think we have talked about, while I don't remember that era that much because I was barely alive, I wasn't alive for half of it, and I was barely alive for the back half of it. But that was a really good era of Bucs basketball. They won a ton of division titles. They had a ton of 50-plus win years. They won a division title, which was then called the Midwest Division, not the Central Division, but they won 7 straight Midwest Division titles with Don Nelson from 1980 to 1987. The problem was, in that era, you had dynasties. You had the Celtics led by Larry Bird. You had the Sixers with Moses Malone and Dr. J. And if you go back into the history books, it just looks like every time the Bucs won a division or they beat one of those teams, then they had to face the other one. They just couldn't get over both of those humps. It was a tough era in the Eastern Conference to be a good team, maybe not necessarily a great team. But they won a lot of games. He took over for Larry Costello in the 1976 season. Up until that point, Costello was the only head coach the Bucs had. He led them to the 71 title, led them back to the finals in 74. Then Kareem wants to leave. They get a boatload back for him. But then it's different. It's a different era at that point. They started the 76 season, I think, 3-15 or 3-16 or something like that. And at that point, Don Nelson was in year 1 as Costello's lead assistant. Don Nelson won 5 NBA titles playing for the Celtics. So he had literally a fistful of rings from his playing days, and he was a big part of those teams. So he comes in his first year as an assistant, and Costello starts 3-15 or 3-16, and all right, I'm stepping away. And this is Don Nelson then discussing what to do next with the then owner. I think his name is Jim Fitzgerald. It's a funny...
And our new owner, Jim Fitzgerald, asked if I would take the team over. He said, we got to get somebody out there. I said, Jim, I'm not ready to be a head coach. He said, well, give it a try. If it doesn't work out at the end of the year, we'll talk about it. Well, 11 years later, I was still there and had some great teams in which Bob Lanier participated in some of them, and I had some unbelievable players there. Think in terms of Sidney Moncrief, Marcus Johnson, Junior Bridgman, Brian Winters, Terry Cummings, Paul Pressey, and we could go on and on.
A lot of those guys they got back in the Kareem trade from L.A., and they were able to restock. And that's kind of what we're hoping, right? That's what we're hoping right now, that this era is going to be, where you got rid of Kareem and everybody thought, oh, my God, how is this team ever going to compete again? But with Don Nelson and with the guys they got back in the Kareem trade, pretty quickly they started winning games again and getting toward division titles. I mean, that would be great if that's the way it goes. I don't know if it's going to go that way, but we can hope. We can hope. But he took over and, like he said, felt unprepared for that job, but he almost immediately got things turned around and won a ton of games. He is the winningest coach in Bucs franchise history, and it is by a wide margin. He won 540 games, a .611 winning percentage. Costello is second place at like 401 or 402, and Nelson was at 540. And then you've just got a mishmash of guys. I mean, even Bud, who had a good 5-year run, right, or 6-year run, 5-year run. He's nowhere. He's not even halfway there. George Karl, not even close to halfway there. I mean, some of the guys I grew up with, Dunleavy, Chris Ford, Jim Boylan, Terry Porter, Terry Stotts before he had a nice run in Portland. But none of those guys even sniffed on Nelson. My father-in-law was a big Bucs fan in that era, in that 70s, 80s era, and he always has a glow in his eye when he talks about those teams, how fun they were to watch, how fun Don Nelson was, not just as a coach, but he was a big personality too. Now, I remember Don Nelson from the 90s, coaching in Golden State and later coaching in Dallas and running the Mavericks and then going back to Golden State. I'm pretty sure he led that Golden State team, that 8 over the 1 seed, the year Dirk and the Mavericks won like 65 games. They were the 1 seed, and a barely 500 Warriors team was the 8 seed, and he led them to that 8 over 1 upset. Then they lost in the next round. That's the Don Nelson I remember. I don't remember Don Nelson being the coach of the Bucs. I was 3 years old his last year there. But you got to at least spend some time on the Wisconsin Sports Podcast here talking about his place in Bucs history as the greatest coach in Bucs history, right? I mean, I know you've got Bud, who won a title, and you've got Costello, who won a title, but when you tally up the wins and the division titles and the longevity, he's got to be right there. And he was an innovator, too. He was one of those first guys that kind of let players do what they wanted to do offensively. Now, they had more of a defensive scheme and a little more locked in there schematically, but he was one of those guys, I mean, a player's coach who kind of said, look, Marcus Johnson, these are great players, the guys he mentioned, Winters, Terry Cummings, Bob Lanier. He said, you guys are great players, just do what you do. And that allowed them the freedom to kind of freelance, but that led to a very high-scoring team in that era, and he did the same thing in Golden State. But he was one of the first coaches to kind of allow for that, instead of having these very strict schemes, and we call plays, and you go here, and you set the screen and go over there. He just kind of said, look, I got a lot of talented guys. Let's just see what they come up with. It's like a chef in a kitchen. It's like the TV show Chopped on Food Network. We put you in a kitchen. Here's the ingredients. You guys know what you're doing. You're here for a reason. Play offense the way you want to. We'll be much more rooted schematically, defensively. But if you do that, let's just play free and loose offensively. And he was one of the first coaches to allow for that to happen. Well, that was big, sad news yesterday. Don Nelson passing away at 86 years old. Yeah, Bucs all-time winningest coach. I don't know if anybody's going to sniff that. Let me just see here. We know Doc is. Doc's gone. Could Taylor Jenkins, if everything goes right in the rebuild, could Taylor Jenkins somehow, let's see here. Nelson 540, Costello 410, Bud 271, George Karl 205, Del Harris 191. That was the first coach I remember, Del Harris. Scott Skiles 162, Jason Kidd 139. Yeah, I mean, Taylor Jenkins would have to put together, like Don Nelson, almost a decade of success where you're winning almost 50 games every year. He was a coach of the year in 83 and 85. Yeah, second all-time winningest coach in NBA history, Don Nelson, passing away at 86. All right, that'll do it for us here on your Monday morning. We'll get back after it on Friday. We will recap Packers-Steelers, first preseason game of the year. We'll be through 4 games, the full Padres series and the first matchup against the Dodgers on Thursday. And keep our eye on the Cubs, too. They're off today, and then where do they go? They've got a pretty soft part of their schedule right now, which is all the more important that the Brewers were able to maintain to win yesterday and to maintain that 5.5-game lead. Cubs are in Washington. You know, I know they gave up some players, but they're hovering around 500. They're not necessarily out of the wild card race in the NL, and they've got a lot of good young players. But they're in Washington starting on Tuesday. We'll keep our eye on that as well. Have a happy, safe work week. We'll chat with you Friday.